Justin Baldoni has responded. It ends with us co-star and Blake Lively mini-me, Isabela Ferrer, with a scorching new legal filing you do not want to miss.
Isabela Ferrer has clearly never been on an aircraft, or she just never listens to that message. Well, we're here, and we're getting ready to take off. So flight attendants, prepare the cabin for takeoff.
This has just got Blake and Ryan written all over it, and her arguments are so weak. So as you know, I did a video last week about how Isabela Ferrer is hiding from Justin Baldoni's lawyers because she doesn't want to be subpoenaed. They tried to subpoena her several times, and then they finally wrote a letter to the judge saying it's impossible to get hold of Isabela Ferrer.
This brilliant reverse Uno card on this. Props to his attorney, Kevin Fritz, who brought it on this, because look, this wasn't a good look for Justin at all, and Blake clearly knew it. Isabela clearly knew it. And now, of course, since our reporting yesterday, all the headlines are running into the Justin Baldoni harassed another co-stars.
I'm sure you've seen it by now, but Isabela Ferrer, well, I guess she's found her voice. She's no longer in hiding, or has the check just cleared? You know, the Blake Lively check. Because Isabela Ferrer is singing a completely different tune and bigging up her chest, quite big on the docket, considering her lawyers are now calling Justin Baldoni all sorts of names and throwing all kinds of accusations around
her behalf, so we have to try and subpoena her in a non-traditional way. Now, Isabela Ferrer is responding, and she's calling out Baldoni's lawyers, saying they are bullies and this is harassment. She's referring to herself as a non-party here. I find that interesting in the first place because, as you know, the court and Blake Lively's team referred to us, content creators and journalists, as third party. So we are more involved in this than Isabela Ferrer, who says she's a non-party.
The sort of anybody who's not paying attention, that's what they're going to take away from this. And that's just so disgusting. Look, I learned how to say this girl's name, Isabela Ferrer. Now I know who you are a little bit more, but not in a good way. I've been defending you. I've backed off from, leave her alone, of course, but girl, what are you doing? What are you doing? If you got an issue with this man, then say it. Don't say it because he's trying to save his career and his reputation.
I missed a lot, and I apologize. I won't have the time to go through everything again today because I'm quite angry about this and I'm quite drained. And honestly, I got my venting done on the live. So I'm gonna just try to hit you with the highlights of what's going on this document. And I'm very, very confused, but I'm not surprised because if you guys will remember from the beginning, every video I made that involved Isabela Ferrer, I made the point to be clear about not infantilizing her.
The latest development in the Justin Baldoni case is here, and it's a turning point. Baldoni has officially struck back at Isabela Ferrer, filing a blistering response that accuses her team of waging a PR war instead of a legal one. His attorneys argue her opposition was irrelevant, overblown, and loaded with inflammatory words like harassment, purely to create damaging headlines. Remember, Ferrer was initially praised as one of the bright spots of It Ends With Us, playing a young Lily Bloom alongside Blake Lively. After production, she even spoke positively about Baldoni, thanking him for creating a safe, supportive set. But in her recent filing, she reversed course completely, accusing him of manipulation and control, simply for subpoenaing her testimony. What makes this especially striking is the fact that she had already complied with a subpoena from Blake Lively's team months earlier without objection. That contradiction is the cornerstone of Baldoni's counterattack. His team points to Rule 26, which requires both sides to disclose witnesses with relevant information. Since Ferrer was already identified by Lively as a key witness, Baldoni's camp argues they have every right to hear from her as well. They even offered an exit strategy: exclude her completely, ensuring neither side can use her testimony. But Ferrer's lawyer refused, raising indemnity disputes and escalating the fight further. For Baldoni, this isn't just about one actress, it's about optics. The more headlines repeat the word harassment, the more damage it does to his career and his company, Wayfarer. That's why this response feels less like a filing and more like a line in the sand. He's not just defending himself legally, he's refusing to let his reputation be defined by a narrative he believes is coordinated against him. And with the trial date in March 2026 fast approaching, Ferrer's sudden shift has become one of the biggest subplots in a case that already had Hollywood holding its breath. The reason Justin Baldoni's counterattack hit so hard is because of what came before it. Isabela Ferrer's opposition wasn't a quiet rejection of a subpoena. It was a full-on offensive. Her filing accused Baldoni of harassment, manipulation, even suggesting that the subpoena was a form of intimidation designed to control her. The language was heavy, the tone dramatic, and the timing perfect for headlines. But here's the detail that makes this stand out. Ferrer had already faced a subpoena earlier in the year, issued by Blake Lively's team. That one, no objections, no fireworks, just compliance. Her lawyer accepted service, and Ferrer did what was required.
Because that's something a lot of creators were doing, a lot of people were doing in general. Oh, let's give her grace. Oh, she's a kid. Oh, she's new. This is just her beginning in the industry. She doesn't know what to do. And I hated the sentiment.
But when Wayfair, Baldoni's company, attempted the same, suddenly the entire process became an attack. To Baldoni's team, that contradiction wasn't just suspicious. It was proof that Ferrer's filing was less about law and more about aligning with Blake Lively's broader narrative. The words themselves tell the story. Baldoni's lawyers pointed out that Ferrer's opposition used harass more than a dozen times. It wasn't subtle, it was intentional. They argued that the document was written to spark headlines like, "Justin Baldoni harasses actress." And sure enough, that's exactly how the story spread across entertainment outlets. Whether the legal argument was strong or not didn't matter. The words stuck. And there's another layer here. Ferrer's lawyer claimed Baldoni hadn't even made proper attempts to serve her, suggesting they should have gone through her talent agent or conducted an exhaustive skip trace. Baldoni's team fired back with receipts, saying the addresses they used weren't random guesses. They were based on due diligence. And besides, Ferrer had legal representation. In their view, it was professional courtesy to go through her lawyer, not chase down agents and managers. This is the foundation of the counterattack. Baldoni's team isn't just saying the harassment claim is false, they're saying it's manufactured. A filing designed not for the court, but for the media cycle. And with that framing, they're setting the stage for their broader argument that the legal battlefield has been turned into a PR weapon against him. When Justin Baldoni's team filed their response, they didn't just deny Ferrer's claims, they dismantled them. They called her opposition an inappropriate attack that strayed far from the actual legal issue of service and veered into personal mudslinging. In other words, her filing wasn't about whether a subpoena was valid, it was about painting Baldoni in the worst possible light. The centerpiece of Baldoni's counter was clarity. A subpoena is not harassment, it's procedure. His lawyers leaned on the fact that Rule 26 of Civil Procedure requires both sides to disclose and question witnesses with relevant information.
She's not a child. A child knows right from wrong. Just because they do wrong doesn't mean they don't know it's wrong. They know. Everything is a choice. Even my child, who is 6 years old, looks me dead in the eye, doing things he knows he's not supposed to do, but he's waiting for the reaction.
Blake Lively herself identified Ferrer as someone with critical testimony. If Lively's team could use her statements, Baldoni's side argued, then fairness demanded they could do the same. Anything less would tilt the playing field. But Baldoni didn't stop there. His team made a move that surprised many observers. They offered a stipulation. The offer was simple. If Ferrer truly wanted out, none of her testimony or communications would be used by either side. This was more than legal courtesy. It was a strategic masterstroke. By putting the decision back in Ferrer's hands, Baldoni showed he wasn't trying to force her into court, but simply trying to level the field. If her team refused that stipulation, it would be clear they weren't protecting Ferrer. They were weaponizing her. The filing also hit back at the idea that Baldoni's lawyers hadn't tried hard enough to serve her. They assured the court that the addresses they used were the result of thorough diligence. More importantly, they reminded the judge that Ferrer already had an attorney on record. In their eyes, chasing agents and running traces wasn't just unnecessary, it was disrespectful to the process. This sharp rebuttal shifted the narrative. Instead of Baldoni being on defense, he was suddenly on offense, portraying himself as the one dealing with obstruction, while Ferrer's team focused on headlines. And this wasn't just about one filing. It was a signal of how Baldoni intends to fight the larger war, with precision, with strategy, and with no tolerance for what he sees as distractions. At the core of Justin Baldoni's counter-argument is something deceptively simple: the rules of civil procedure. specifically Rule 26A1, which requires each party in a case to disclose witnesses who may have relevant information. Once a name is on that list, both sides are entitled to seek testimony. And that's exactly what happened with Isabela Ferrer. Blake Lively's amended disclosures listed Ferrer as someone with knowledge that could support her case. That meant Ferrer wasn't just a bystander. She was officially recognized as a potential witness. Lively's team acted on that by serving Ferrer with a subpoena back in February 2025, which her lawyer accepted without hesitation. No drama, no accusations, just standard procedure. But when Wayfarer, Baldoni's company, issued its own subpoena months later, suddenly the process became harassment. That's where Baldoni's lawyers dug in.
And you either have to give them the reaction they want or the opposite. Either way, it's a choice and they know they're making it. Now, it's debatable, how young a person has to be to know absolute right from wrong. But to try to say Isabela Ferrer, a 24-year-old woman pushing 25 in a matter of months.
How can the exact same act, serving a subpoena, be routine when Lively does it, but harassment when Baldoni does it? The inconsistency, they argued, was glaring. And it wasn't just inconsistent, it was unfair. To hammer this point home, Baldoni's team highlighted the stakes. Without Ferrer's testimony, the court would hear only one side of her perspective, the version Blake Lively's team chose to spotlight. Excluding Baldoni from questioning her would tilt the trial, giving Lively access to evidence while blocking Baldoni from mounting a full defense. In their filing, his lawyers called this outcome unacceptable, arguing that fairness and balance demanded both parties be given the same access to witnesses. They also rejected Ferrer's claim that they hadn't been diligent in trying to reach her. The addresses used weren't random guesses. They came from reliable records tied to her work on It Ends With Us. And while her lawyer suggested they could have gone through her talent agent, Baldoni's team insisted that was beside the point. She had legal representation. Professional practice required them to deal with her attorney, not hunt her down through industry contacts. This argument wasn't just about Ferrer, it was about establishing principle. If Baldoni's side can be cut off from witnesses already identified in disclosures, then the entire process breaks down. And that's exactly why Baldoni's lawyers were determined to draw a clear line. Subpoenas aren't harassment, they're the backbone of discovery. If the subpoena fight wasn't messy enough, Isabela Ferrer's lawyer added another layer: money. Buried inside her filing was a claim that Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni's production company, had breached its obligations under her contract. The issue? Indemnity. In plain terms, indemnity clauses are designed to protect performers. If an actor gets pulled into legal disputes tied to a project, the studio usually covers their legal costs. It's a safeguard, making sure talent isn't left footing massive bills for issues they didn't create. Ferrer's team insists she was entitled to that coverage under her It Ends With Us agreement. But here's the twist. According to Ferrer's filing, Wayfarer conditioned that coverage on one thing: control. They would cover her fees only if they managed her legal response, effectively dictating how she engaged with the subpoenas. Her lawyer argued that this wasn't protection at all. It was financial leverage, forcing Ferrer to surrender independence in exchange for support she was already owed. Baldoni's side flatly rejected this. In their counter, they accused Ferrer's lawyer of manufacturing disputes to inflate his fees. They argued that the indemnity clause wasn't breached, and that Ferrer's counsel was creating issues where none should exist.
Is a child and doesn't know much is absolutely wild, especially in this industry. People in this industry tend to have to grow up a little earlier, a little sooner, because you have to be you have to be taught and you have to be made to understand what industry you're walking into, what rooms you're walking into, the people you're surrounding yourself with. So I was never with the idea of calling her a child and giving her quote unquote grace and allowing, things to play out. Because the grace you guys have been giving her, she turned around, sharpened it, and turned it into a shiv, and she just stabbed everybody in the back. Because the way her lawyers are talking on the docket, which we're going to get into it, because I mentioned on the live, the tonation, the way her lawyer is speaking, the way the motion is just written in general, some of the references they're making, it feels nothing like a new lawyer has entered the conversation. It feels nothing like there's a new lawyer in the docket. All I see and all I hear is Mike Gottlieb and Ezra Hudson in my ear.
From their perspective, this wasn't about justice or fairness. It was about dragging out a fight to pad legal bills. This indemnity twist is important because it shifts the story from testimony to trust. If Ferrer's claims are taken at face value, it suggests Baldoni's company used financial pressure to control how she engaged in the case. That paints an entirely different picture, one not just about subpoenas, but about power dynamics behind the scenes. But for Baldoni's team, the move was transparent. By injecting contract disputes into a subpoena fight, they said Ferrer's lawyer was muddying the waters and distracting from the real issue. And whether or not the indemnity claim sticks, the damage is already done. It created yet another angle for headlines, fueling the perception that Baldoni and his company were playing hardball with a young actress. And that's where the battle spilled out of the courtroom and into the press. Because once the word harassment collided with claims of financial control, the media couldn't resist running with the story. Once the filings were public, the courtroom fight quickly turned into a media war. Isabela Ferrer's opposition wasn't just legal paperwork, it was written like a press release. The repetition of words like harassment, control, and manipulation wasn't accidental. Baldoni's lawyers pointed out that the word harass appeared more than a dozen times. And sure enough, that language became the story. Within hours, entertainment sites and gossip blogs were running with headlines that echoed those same terms. Justin Baldoni harasses actress, or young star accuses director of intimidation. The nuance of legal procedure, Rule 26, or the fact that Ferrer had already cooperated with a subpoena from Blake Lively, all of that was lost in translation. The only thing the public saw was the word harassment stamped onto Baldoni's name. That's what makes this moment so damaging for Baldoni. In Hollywood, the court of public opinion often matters as much as the courtroom itself. Even if his legal response was airtight, once the headlines were written, the narrative was already tilting against him. Baldoni's filing tried to push back on this directly, calling Ferrer's opposition inflammatory and accusing her team of creating a coordinated campaign meant to spark coverage. And the strategy worked, at least for Ferrer's side. The filing made her look like she was standing up against a powerful director, while Baldoni was cast as the aggressor. For audiences unfamiliar with the details, that storyline was compelling. For Baldoni, it was frustrating. His team argued the subpoena was routine, that they'd even offered to exclude Ferrer entirely. But none of that made headlines the way the harassment claim did. This PR angle also fed perfectly into Blake Lively's broader case. If the media paints Baldoni as controlling, then Lively's claims from late 2024 sound more credible. It's a domino effect. One dramatic filing strengthens the larger narrative, even if it has little legal weight. And that's why Baldoni's response had to do more than argue law. It had to counter perception. But perception wasn't the only contradiction at play, because Ferrer herself had once told a very different story about Baldoni. What makes Isabela Ferrer's filing so hard to ignore isn't just the accusations, it's the reversal. Not long ago, Ferrer was publicly praising Justin Baldoni.
I don't know if you guys will feel that way when you get a chance to read it for yourself or hear some of the quotes I'm going to bring up out of it, but it feels like she is in cahoots with Team Lively. I said it, sue me. Well, don't, but sue me. In the last video, we covered Isabela Ferrer was dodging a subpoena, pretty much.
Describing her experience on the set of It Ends With Us as positive and supportive. She said he had created an environment where she felt comfortable, where collaboration was encouraged. For Baldoni, that kind of testimony was proof he had delivered on his promise to make the production feel safe and welcoming. But now, those same memories are being reframed. In her opposition, Ferrer's lawyer argued that Baldoni was appropriating her narrative by pointing to her earlier praise in his defense. The idea was that reminding the court of her positive comments was itself a form of manipulation. For Baldoni's team, that argument bordered on surreal. To them, using a witness's own words wasn't appropriation. It was evidence. This sharp turnaround is where the filing gained real traction. If Ferrer once said she felt safe, why is she now painting Baldoni as intimidating? Was her original praise genuine, or has her perspective changed under the weight of the larger lawsuit between Blake Lively and Baldoni? These questions don't just matter legally, they matter for the story being told in the media, and the answers aren't clear. To Baldoni's side, the shift is proof Ferrer's filing was crafted to match Lively's narrative, not her actual experience. They point out that the language, words like harassment and control, mirrors phrases already used by Lively's lawyers. To Ferrer's camp, the contradiction isn't a problem at all. They frame it as part of her right to resist being pulled deeper into litigation she never wanted to be involved in. The result is that Ferrer has gone from a background figure in the trial to one of its most unpredictable players. If she's ever forced to testify, both sides could spin her words to fit their version of events. And that unpredictability makes her a dangerous witness for Baldoni, even if he ultimately excludes her. But the contradictions don't just raise questions about Ferrer, they highlight how high the stakes are for Baldoni himself, because each filing, each headline, chips away at the image he's spent years building. To understand why Isabela Ferrer's filing matters so much, you have to see it in the context of the larger war. At the center of all this is Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, a case that has already reshaped careers and sparked one of Hollywood's most closely watched trials in years. It all began in December 2024, when Lively filed her claims against Baldoni. Almost immediately, the story exploded into headlines. Baldoni fired back with a defamation countersuit, arguing that Lively's accusations were designed to destroy his reputation and derail Wayfarer's projects. That countersuit was dismissed in June 2025, but the damage was already done. The trial, now set for March 2026, is expected to be one of the most high-profile courtroom battles in entertainment history. This is where Ferrer enters the picture. She may not have been a lead star, but her role as young Lily Bloom meant she had direct exposure to Baldoni and the environment he created on set. Blake Lively recognized that early, naming Ferrer as a witness in her disclosures. By doing so, Lively signaled that Ferrer's perspective could help her case. Ferrer's cooperation with Lively's subpoena in February reinforced that alignment.
Because the Wayfarer parties have tried umpteen times to try to subpoena her, and they can't seem to get a hold of her or her lawyer. But today, her lawyer found the vim, the gumption, and the vigor to write back on a docket stating, "You're going to be infuriated. I'm letting you know. I'm warning you ahead of time. Don't say I didn't do anything for you ever. I'm telling you right now, you're about to be pissed off."
So when Baldoni's team tried to subpoena Ferrer themselves, her resistance wasn't just personal, it was strategic. To Baldoni's lawyers, it looked like an attempt to give Lively exclusive access to Ferrer's testimony while blocking Baldoni's side from presenting their version of events. That imbalance is what made the fight so critical. And it's also why Ferrer's filing was about more than just one actress. It reinforced a broader narrative that Lively's side has been building for months. Baldoni as the aggressor, Baldoni as the one who crosses lines. Whether Ferrer's accusations stand up in court or not, they echo Lively's central claim, adding another voice to the same story. That's what makes Ferrer so important to this bigger picture. She's not just a side character anymore. She's become a key piece on the chessboard in a case that's shaping up to define reputations, careers, and possibly the balance of power in Hollywood. At this point, the fight between Justin Baldoni and Isabela Ferrer is no longer just about one subpoena. It's become a symbol of the larger battle Baldoni is waging, one fought on two fronts, the courtroom and the court of public opinion. On paper, Baldoni's arguments are grounded in procedure. Rule 26, fairness in witness testimony, and the right for both sides to access the same information all back his position. But in practice, Ferrer's filing changed the conversation. By loading it with words like harassment and control, her opposition became more powerful outside the courtroom than inside it. And that's the part Baldoni can't ignore. Every time his name is tied to those accusations, it reshapes how the public sees him, how Hollywood views him, and how potential collaborators decide whether to take a risk on his projects. For Ferrer, the filing may have been about avoiding deeper involvement in a messy case. For Baldoni, it created yet another layer of scrutiny, another challenge to a reputation he's fighting to protect. What makes this even more significant is how it fits into the broader war with Blake Lively. Her case against Baldoni is still moving toward that blockbuster March 2026 trial, and Ferrer's filing plays directly into her narrative. Even if the court never entertains the harassment claim, the headlines already have. And that's where Baldoni faces his toughest opponent, not just Blake Lively, not just Isabela Ferrer, but the perception machine of Hollywood itself. So where does this leave us? Baldoni has drawn a line in the sand. He's refused to let Ferrer's claims stand uncontested, striking back with legal precision and offering a clear way to level the playing field. But whether that's enough to undo the damage remains to be seen. Because in this story, evidence and fairness matter, but narrative matters more. And as the trial date creeps closer, one thing is certain: this war is far from over, and the next twist could change everything.